welcome to this episode of This Week on the Battlefield, the show where we cover news, updates, the community, and so much more, all around the Battlefield franchise. In today's episode, we have all the major details of the update to come next week, including, most notably, the time to kill, time to death netcode fixes that are being introduced, as well as some vehicle and weapon balance changes. In the community news section, we've got the loss of a legend, but also the interesting EA investor call to talk about and the details that emerged from there. Starting off straight with the news section, as we always do. In terms of small news or things to note that you may want to know, the Squad Conquest game mode is only going to be playable until the 13th of February as previously announced. So if you're a big fan of that game mode, make sure to get a couple more rounds in before it disappears for, at this point, an unknown period of time. In terms of communication introductions that we got this week, there's actually a couple of things to talk about. We got the quality of life tracker and the anti-cheat blog from DICE. The quality of life tracker is something that's going to be updated continuously and shows us what the top issues are currently being worked on by the team in any given week. It may not include some of the more long-term things that they're working on, hopefully, for example, visibility. Who knows if that's ever going to be fixed, but it will be updated on a continuous basis and give us a little bit of an idea of what DICE is currently worked on. As per usual, you'll find it linked down below in the description or up above in the card. In terms of what was on the quality of life tracker this week, amongst other things, the loading screen hanging between different maps, which of course leads to essentially you forced to quit the game, happens to me on a continuous basis. The end of round screen not correctly showing the amount of company coin that you earned in that round. The Tiger tank skin from the single player campaign not tracking the mission and not being able to be unlocked. Another one of those issues that has got people relatively frustrated, and some more stability and bug performance issues that really aren't too interesting to go into too much detail, but sorely need fixing. The anti-cheat blog, on the other hand, isn't as useful, if you ask me, as a quality of life tracker, because while it does tell us how DICE is currently going about detecting cheaters, with obviously not going into too much detail there because they don't want to give the cheaters an edge, and how they wish to improve, again, not too much detail there. There doesn't seem to be very much substance there, possibly for understandable reasons because they don't want to tell the cheaters how they're going to catch them. At the same time, we've heard things like this before, and I have little confidence that DICE is going to be putting significant resources behind actually reducing cheating in their games. Then again, they never have. At the same time, however, I'd like to point out that personally, I haven't been affected by cheating, at least to my knowledge, too much, but I do know that there's plenty of players out there which suffer quite considerably under the cheating that goes on in multiplayer in Battlefield 5. In terms of the most exciting segment of today's week's news, though, is the, well, I guess you could say leaked changelog for next week's update, which of course was confirmed by DICE is actually real, but doesn't include all the details just yet. And therefore, we do know quite a lot of what is to be expected and changed in the coming update coming next week. Now, in terms of additions, this was always known. We're getting Combined Arms, a 4-player 8-mission co-op mode next week for all of us to enjoy if we're really into that thing. Personally, I just prefer a new multiplayer map, but maybe that's just me. In terms of changes and improvements, the clear focus for this patch is on time to kill and time to death netcode improvements. Again, I'd like to point out there is no changes to the actual time to kill of weapons, only how the server deals with packets, damage transfer, and indications of the player being shot. So no worry, our blessed fast time to kill hasn't been tinkered with in the slightest. Now, while I don't want to go into too many details as to exactly how this time to kill netcode is being improved, I'll leave it linked down below in the description. What I will point out is that we're getting increased damage updates per packet so that there's less delay between, well, the server saying you've now only got 20 health and your client showing you've now only got 20 health because of that pesky camping sniper. And also some changes to the damage health update desync issue, which was the one where you lose a lot of health suddenly from a bullet that really shouldn't be doing that much damage. For example, an SMG doing 70 damage, and then as soon as your health is in any way updated, because for example, you take another shot of damage or you choose to heal yourself, your health actually jumps up suddenly to the actual value you were at. Let's say you were actually at 50 health instead of 20 health, and accordingly, you've been misinformed by your client. That's a little bit of a desync issue that was going on that's been fixed as well. We've also got some more improvements to vaulting, as we have a demonstration video from one of the devs to look at for. We've also got some major changes to vehicle balance. Interestingly enough, the more major changes, however, focusing on tanks, not necessarily aircraft, although there are some changes there that have been made, but aren't really interesting enough to go into too much detail in today's video. However, in terms of the tank stem, we have increased muzzle velocity of the tank shells, At the same time, however, an increased drop, making, well, long-range combat as difficult, if not more difficult than ever, but the more medium close-range tank engagements feel, or should feel, a little bit more snappy and responsive. We've also got a buff to heavy tanks, them getting about 25% more armor against other tank shells, making them a little bit more, well, powerful versus, for example, the medium tanks, which supposedly were previously able to keep up with their damage and even out-damage them, which of course wasn't exactly what DICE was going for really in terms of vehicle balance, given that they are, of course, a significantly slower tank. Lastly, then, we've got a buff to the AP shells, the armor-piercing round shells. They should now more consistently do a little bit more damage than the HE shells against armored targets, which is, of course, the way that they should be working. In terms of weapon and gadgets then, however, we've got improvements to the spawn beacon placement. Again, a demonstration was provided, which should now at least, well, be able to be placed more consistently and maybe not on top of bushes and tops of trees. The frag grenade rifle is getting a rightful kicking, and in a quite intelligent way, if I may add, where once it's fired, if it hits the ground too close to where it was fired from, for example, those people who just fire it right in front of them when they come across an enemy in close quarters to get an easy one-shot kill, it won't actually explode. It will bounce and bounce away and then explode, which could actually lead into some funny situations where you miss your target, it bounces against a wall and bounces back on you, killing you instead of your enemy target. This should prevent some of the spam that previously was happening in close encounter combat with this gadget. Again, a great demonstration provided by one of the developers. Slug rounds are getting some love in this patch as well, with their 2-hit kill range being extended from 25 to 30 meters and their 1-shot headshot range being extended from 35 to 50 meters. The KE7 got a little bit of a nerf, with its vertical recoil going up from 0.65 to 0.7, and with its horizontal recoil going from 0.225 to the left and right to 0.24 to the left and right. Similarly, the Turner and Mass, as well as the Gewehr 1.5, saw their maximum damages reduced respectively for the Turner and Mass from 45 to 40, and for the Gewehr 1.5 from 40 to 36. This, however, of course, not impacting their 3-shot kill range, simply how they perform maybe on already damaged targets, which should make them slightly less effective, but not too less effective. The ZK383, regrettably, however, also got a nerf, with its horizontal recoil getting a significant increase from 0.34 to the left and right to 0.3825 to the left and right. This, accordingly, to bring it more in line with some of the other faster firing SMGs, such as the Suomi and Tommy gun, because it supposedly was performing too well compared to, well, all of the other SMGs. If that is actually the case, and I didn't have that experience, I would like to point out to DICE that the smarter move would maybe to make the rest of the SMGs a little bit more powerful and bring them up to the ZK383, because a lot of people were enjoying that weapon because it finally seemed like an additional feasible SMG that wasn't just capable of taking people down in extreme close quarters like the Tommy gun and the Suomi. In terms of fixes then, and I am well aware that today's video in terms of news, updates and changes is relatively long, but there is just so much detail to cover today. We've got ammo and health crates no longer falling through the ground, supposedly at least. We'll see once the patch releases. The re-enabling of the ability to purchase past Tides of War mission rewards, which should be good if you missed out on any of the assignments, the Frontlines game mode not showing up in the server browser, the Flak Panzer getting the needed kick because supposedly because of a bug it was doing too much damage, and the wrong pouch showing up when you got ammo or health or applied one of those patches should now also be a thing of the past. That one particular bugging me and confusing me frequently when playing Battlefield 5. Lastly then, in terms of news, the last few bullet points to cover are future issues, content and additions that are in the works and should be coming, while not in this patch, relatively soon. We've got tweaks to the launcher, site customization, which is something I'd be significantly looking forward to, and even possibly some additional squad conquest maps. That is, of course, if DICE decides to keep the game mode active and not retire it come February 13th. In community news then, however, there's two things to talk about. And the first is a little bit, well, sad, and that is the loss of Dan Mitre as our chief community manager for Battlefield as a series. He's been with the game and with the company for quite some time and was for many a good contact point when it came to the interaction between the community and the developer studio. Great guy by all accounts, although I haven't personally had the pleasure of meeting him to this date. Shame to see him going. We all of course wish him the best. He's going to be founding his own company centered around esports and competitive gaming. I hope he's most successful with that. Of course, however, we're not without community managers. Braddock is going to be taking up the mantle, who of course already previously has been doing a great job with interacting with the community, but also Ben Walker, responsible for the Star Wars Battlefront series up until now, will be, in addition to his past role there, taking on Battlefield as well. And he already has started making some changes, amongst them, for example, putting out the first of a monthly survey to ask players about concurrent issues with the game and how they feel about communication or what the major issues are that DICE should be addressing to make the game more enjoyable or make us more likely to recommend it to our friends. If you care about Battlefield, if you want to have some input on what's getting changed and fixed, absolutely go ahead and answer the survey. It only takes about 2 or 3 minutes. I'll leave it linked down below in the description and of course up in the information card for you guys to head over there and tell DICE what is the most pressing issue that needs fixing. Is it visibility? Is it team balancer? Is it a lack of content? Whatever it is, let them know. The second of the issues, of course, in the community news section was the EA investors call. And we don't need to make a 5 or 15-minute video out of this because plenty of content creators have covered it in plentiful detail. I'll have a couple of videos linked down below if you want to know a little bit more about what was the content of that investors call. Westy, Jack Frads all put out decent videos covering that topic. What I would like to say is that the major points to take from it was that DICE supposedly blames the lack of success, selling more than 1 million copies less than they estimated, on the focus of single player instead of Firestorm, a poor marketing campaign, that one most definitely being true, the subpar launch state of the game, again happy to see DICE actually recognize that for a change, and the only reason I really believe that they have is because it's hit their wallet and hit their share price as well, although it should be noted that the share price bounced up the day after, pretty much to where it started the day before. What I'd like to really show or point out here is that the successful launch of Apex, Respawn's in the Titanfall verse set Battle Royale, I think is more of a lesson than the lack of sales for Battlefield for EA when it comes to how to launch and in what state to launch Battlefield in the future. Apex has been humongously successful, within the first 72 hours cracking the 10 million unique player mark, with that of course beating out both PUBG and even Fortnite, another free-to-play battle royale, in case you were living under a rock. And that not because the game was necessarily only free, that's one of the reasons, but because the game launched without controversial marketing efforts and in a playable state. No major issues to report that really impacted the enjoyability of the game. It's by all accounts, an extremely enjoyable game. Everybody who's played it seems to be very much enjoying it, and as such, more people by spread and word of mouth have picked the game up. I hope DICE can look at this, and I hope EA can look at this and say, this is how we should be launching our games, because clearly it's much more valuable to spend that money there instead of, I don't know, a convoluted bad marketing campaign or rushing the thing out of the door. I hope they learned something from it, only time will tell. Now, usually we would go into the only in Battlefield moment, but because of the length of today's video and the lack of time on my part, I've decided to leave that out for this episode. But I would like to hear some feedback on that section. Is it something you think should continue to be part of the This Week on the Battlefield show, or would you like to see it replaced with a different section or even omitted entirely? And if replaced, what you would like to see it replaced with? I'd really be interested in your feedback on that, so leave that down below in the comments for me so I can of course continue to improve my format. But with that coming to the end of this week's episode then, if you enjoyed the show, found it interesting or entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it, and of course hit me up with your feedback, suggestions and opinions down below in the comments or over on Twitter. With that being said, however, I'd like to thank you very much for watching and hope to see you in the next episode of This Week on the Battlefield.